Thank you for joining us at Miniature Wargaming Labs. I'm James,
I'm Brian.
and today we're going to be talking about Frostgrave, the first edition. So,
So
second edition has just come out, Brian, but as I remember, you were a big fan of first edition.
well, considering that I have almost every single book in print, minus the folio and the magazines, including the storybooks that were written about the world, yeah, I'm kind of a fan of Frostgrave. Um, so as of right now, Frostgrave 2.0 has come out and has been out for a couple weeks now, and is absolutely amazing. But what we wanted to do today is kind of go over Frostgrave, since we haven't really talked about Frostgrave other than here and there. Really discuss it and to go over what it is, because it is, if you want to find it, it is free online to download as a PDF. So if you do want to play Frostgrave, but you don't want to invest in Frostgrave Second Edition, which I think you should if you want to play Frostgrave, but First Edition is out there for free and is still a very awesome game. So we want to go over that, and then when we discuss the Second Edition, we'll go over some of the changes from First Edition to Second Edition.
So, who published this game?
So this is an Osprey hardcover. Written by Joseph Makulo. We've spoken about a couple of his games already. And this was his first game. And what a first game it was, because this is absolutely amazing, and it just got better as things were released for it.
Well, it allowed, I think we've called Joseph McCall is basically the Little Richard of the wargaming world. He's like the hardest working man in wargaming.
Oh, yeah.
Brought the number of just independent articles that he puts out as exclusives across all the wargaming magazines. I mean, he's just constantly generating scenarios on an edition.
I mean, I'm honestly surprised not to find one of his scenarios for Frostgrave in a White Dwarf.
It just slips it in there. So, you've explained Frostgrave to me before, but what's the theme of the game?
So it's wizard battles in a frozen city is the most basic description I could get. So what it is, it's you play as a wizard with an apprentice and a warband, going up against other wizards with apprentices and warbands, finding treasure and power in a frozen city that has been forgotten in time, called Felstad. And this city is a city of ancient magic. So it was pretty much like, this is where all like the wizards went to school. This is where this is the place that all the wizards with mega power came in, and then something happened. The city was destroyed, forgotten, and now has been found again, and now wizards are traveling to it to find treasure and powerful artifacts. Of course, there is residual magic. Creatures have moved in, and other traps have been laid to thwart the adventurers that have found it.
All right. So, what do you need to play this game?
So first of all, you need the book, or at least the PDF. You're going to need a character sheet for your warband and your wizard and apprentice. You're going to need a couple D20s. The most I've ever needed is 2, and that's usually just to share with somebody. Of course, I have 10 in my gamer bag for Frostgrave, because, more dice means you're going to be better, right? You're going to need the spells, which are in the book. You could also buy the Grimoire, which I'll tell you why you don't want to buy this unless you want to play first edition. So you'll need those, which are all in the book, a pencil, of course, to write down all your stats, and terrain and miniatures. So miniatures, you'll need, you could have up to 10 miniatures in your warband. If starting warband usually isn't that big, because you have to spend, you have a certain amount of gold to spend on your army. on your warband, and your apprentice usually takes about half of that, because you want an apprentice because they could use all the same spells as your wizard. But so you need anywhere from 5 to 10 miniatures, some random monsters, and a terrain to fill a 3x3 board. Now, the more terrain you have is actually a little bit better because line of sight is a big part of this game. So blocking line of sight and having interesting avenues to find treasure and to put treasure makes this game a whole lot more fun.
Okay, so I remember before I moved out to New Mexico, out on the East Coast, there were a lot of game stores that Frostgrave allowed them to sell a lot of WizKids, like the 2-pack model ones. But I know, what is it, North Star makes the Frostgrave line of miniatures, even though this is miniature agnostic.
Yes.
It was still a miniature agnostic game that was popular enough to have its own miniature line.
Yes. So Nick Ayer's North Star miniature military miniatures makes a line of both metal 2-pack miniatures and multi-part plastic warband boxes for this game. I have both. I've bought both. So I have some of the metal miniatures, and they are awesome. I love metal miniatures. That's what I started with. My entire warband is made out of metal miniatures. So I have a love for the metal miniatures, and I love that there are actual metal miniatures for this game. The multi-part plastic kits are absolutely amazing. You can make think up to 20 miniatures from each box. And you'll have so many bits left over that you'll be able to make 10 more guys off of other miniatures. So, and the fact that they have male wizard box, they have a female wizard box, they have a male warband box, they have a female warband box. So depending on what you want, they have it. They have a null box. They have a cultist box. They just have a lot of different variety that you can choose from when building your warband.
All right. So looking at this game, who should play this game?
So this game is really simple. It really simplifies a lot of the more complex rules that you find in miniature games, like fighting. It makes it one roll to determine everything from if you hit to how much damage you do, which is usually 2 to 3 different rolls depending on the game. So the simplicity of this game really draws to newer gamers. This is also a really great game for role-playing fans because this in later expansions you get really good stories that you build on and campaigns. So the Rise of the Lich Lord is a really good campaign and probably one of the best campaigns for this game. It plays like a RPG campaign. So everyone that plays like D&D 5th edition, they have their miniatures, they have their D20s. All they need to do is pick up a book and some terrain, and you're playing this game. And if you're anything like me, whenever you start a new miniature game, you play with cardboard cutouts for pretty much everything, including your terrain. So really easy to get into, especially if you're a RPG player, especially if you're a 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons player, or just wanting to get started with a miniature game that doesn't take a lot of time and space.
So how do the game mechanics work? Because you mentioned it's a D20 system.
Yeah, so it's a really basic D20 system. So all of your checks, you'll have a certain number, and you're going to have to roll above that. So if you have a dice check of 15, you'll need to get a 15 or above. Attacking is really interesting. So if you're going up against something, both of you will roll a d20, both you or the creature, you or your opponent, and whoever has the highest will hit. And that's also how much damage is dealt to the person after you account for
The
their
difference
armor.
between the rolls?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, no, actually, no. So if you roll a 15 and your opponent rolls a 10, the 15 goes through. It's not subtracted from the roll, it's subtracted from their armor. So everyone has a basic armor of 10. So if I roll a 15 and I beat you whatever you roll, it'll go up against your armor, which is anywhere from 10 to 12. A little up. I've seen up to 15. But let's say it's at 11. You'll take 4 points of damage. So that really simplifies what you do in rolling, especially if you go to 40k, you're rolling, do I hit? Do I wound? How many wounds do I do? You save. That's 4 different rolls just to figure out how much damage a single hit does. This is one roll, 1d20, and it does for all the checks. So if you have a spell, let's say you're casting a spell, if the spell is DC 5, you have to roll more than a 5. Well, with bonuses and everything, it's really easy to do that. But if you fail, nothing goes off. There is a crit mechanic in this game. It makes the game extremely swingy, but also makes it a lot of fun, where you can have a little basic warrior beat up a barbarian in one hit. But it's a really simple D20 system. If you've played D&D 5th edition, you'll know exactly how to play as soon as you read the rules.
All right. So what are some of the unique features of the game?
So usually when you look at a fantasy miniature game, the focus is on the fighting. The focus is on beating your opponent with force and might, and this kind of takes away from that. It kind of steps away from that and goes, okay, how can we make a game where fighting is in the game, but it's not the focus? This game focuses on treasure collection. If you're not getting treasure, you're not going to win the game. So whoever gets the most treasure is who wins the game. So you're really going after the treasure. You're not fighting. I've had games where I never even had a confrontation with an opponent because he threw up walls blocking all of my attempts to get to him and any of the treasure beyond that. And so we just collected the treasure on each side of the table and the game was over. So this is, it also focuses on the wizards being the main characters because they're the ones looking for treasure, and the warband people, the barbarians, the rangers, the main characters in other stories, they're the side cast. They're the ones that the wizard has paid to come with them to protect them on their way to get treasure.
I'm sorry. Well, you keep on saying treasure so much. It makes me think of Terrence and Phillip.
I mean, there's a lot of treasure in this game. That is the whole thing about this game. It is treasure, treasure, treasure.
So now everything centers around the wizard and the apprentice. How's the rest of the gang or like the faction put together? How do you organize that?
So in first edition, you have a list of people that you can pay for. You could buy a war dog, so you could have a war dog. You can have a basic archer. So you have your basic men, and then you have your more like specialized. Which in second edition, I'll go over how they changed that a little bit. But in first edition, you could buy as many as you want, but you only have a certain amount of money. So I think you start off with 1,000 gold to build your warband. 500 of that gold has to go to your apprentice because you want an apprentice. I've never seen anybody not take an apprentice. Because if your wizard dies, your apprentice will take over that spot. If your wizard dies and you don't have an apprentice, you have to start over. And in campaigns, that's a big thing. Like losing a wizard is really bad if you don't have an apprentice. So you want to spend the 500 on your apprentice, and then you have 500 gold left. Now, the really, really good, like the ranger, which has really good archery skills, has really good fighting skills, they cost 100 gold. Barbarians will cost 100 gold. Your sharpshooter will cost 100 gold. So your really more specialized characters will cost 100 gold. So you're really limited on what you can do with them. but you also have options, cheaper options to fill out your warband to its great effectiveness. So you definitely want some of those more expensive guys, but you also want a lot more bodies, because the more bodies you have, the more people can carry treasure. So one of the big things about this game is that getting to the treasure is only half of the battle. You have to pick up the treasure and take it back off of the table edge. And you could only leave the edge that you came in on. So it makes it extra hard. And carrying a treasure cuts your movement score in half. So if you have a movement of 4 inches, you're down to 2 inches. So you're not moving fast, so you're a big target. So the people that can move fast and get to it and are tougher are going to cost more, but they're also more viable. But having more bodies is also good, because if you have one guy go up, grab the treasure, get shot, you have another guy already out there with him to grab the treasure.
Keep going.
Exactly.
All right, so you made the reference, and I've seen this in stores, of where D&D players picked up the Frostgrave.
Mm-hmm.
So can you use that gold to customize your your crew members? So can you buy them like unique armor, weapons? Is there a lot of customization on those secondary characters?
So the wizard, of course, can carry I think up to 5 or 6 different items, making them really unique. Your apprentice can carry a little less. Now your secondary characters, they can carry 2 items, and that's it. And that includes armor. If you give them special armor, it counts as an item slot. So let's say you get enchanted armor. Yes, they can carry it, but it takes up a slot and it removes their other armor that they were using, which is usually worse than their regular armor, than the armor that you just gave them. So there is a little bit of customization, but this is where an open miniature game really shines. Is instead of customization in game, you have customization in modeling. So you could do whatever you want with your miniatures. I have 3 different war bands that have completely different looks. I have 2 sharpshooters that, yes, they both have the same exact loadout in game, but they look completely different. So your customization is going to come in on how your miniatures look and not how they play. But your wizards can carry like 2 rings of power, a staff and a sword, and a cloak of invisibility. So, I mean, your wizard's going to be decked out and have the most treasure, because, I mean, he's the one that's going to find treasure. So everyone else is left with more gold, and your wizard is left with all the bling that you get in the loot boxes.
Okay, I didn't know if you could equip like your fighter with a purple sword +5.
I mean, you can,
yeah,
but that just takes up one of the slots.
Okay, so because of that dynamic with the wizard and the apprentice, how does the campaign system work in this game?
So the campaign system is really cool. So you're going to first start off with a basic level 1 wizard and a level 1 apprentice. And as you level up, as you go through game, you'll gain experience. You spend that experience to gain levels. And then you get gold and treasure. And of course, as you move up, you're going to want to buy more character. You're going to want to buy more secondary characters. Some of them are going to die. In a campaign, you can lose characters. Like I said, you could lose your wizard. Your wizard can die. Your apprentice can die. So you want to keep your gold up. You also have so you want to keep your gold up so that you can buy characters as your characters die. You can buy treasure. It's much more expensive because you have to go back to a city to purchase it, rather than going to Felstad to find it. And then you have a keep. So each wizard has a keep that they can upgrade, and that gives them extra bonuses depending on what they have in it. So like I had one that had a kennel. So I automatically started each game with a dog. Um, it took one of the slots of my warriors, but I got it for free. I don't have to pay for it. If one of the dog dies, then I get another one in the next
Okay.
game. So there's stuff that you could do with that. There's depending on how you want to play. I've played in a couple campaigns. The first campaign I did was just play whatever game you want, whatever mission you want. I played another one where we actually played through Thawd the Lich Lord, and each week we did a different scenario, and that actually continued a story. It actually created a narrative where we got to the end and fought the Lich Lord and defeated him and put him back in ice and saved all of Felstad so that all the other magical creatures can run amok. So it's really how you want to play it. I really like the RPG-ness of it. So I really like going through the books that are provided and, messing around with them in that sense and going through them. But you could also make your own. I have enough books that I can compile my own story. I've made my own scenarios because once you read a lot of the scenarios, you figure out how they're kind of set up. Because they're actually like the system that he bases them on and bases them around is actually pretty easy to figure out once you read the game. So once you have a little bit of experience, you'll be able to make scenarios and campaigns really easily and really quickly.
Well, so let's talk about how are the scenarios included? Because I made the comment that he can crank out scenarios. Very, very prodigious writer. And so I know, like, sometimes like the War Games Illustrated or some of the other UK magazines, when I'm done, I just give them to you because like every couple of months in one of them, he has a new scenario in there. So how are the scenarios included in the campaign? Can you just take from the book? Do you just compile them together?
Yeah, so the first campaign that I did was all out of the first book. The only book that you can use was the first book, and that included the missions. There are 10 scenarios in the first book, and each of them is awesome. Some of them, each one takes about a page of text, and it's not even text, it's mostly pictures. But it's really easy to read, really easy to go through. So there's 10 of them. You can choose what you want. So really, if you buy the first book, Frostgrave 1.0, you're set up. You don't have to buy any of the other books. You have plenty to go off of. You have everything you need. It has all the campaign rules, all of the scenarios that you'll need, all the spells. The other books will be able to be moved into second edition. So if you do want to start with first edition and you buy some of the other books, don't worry. They're going to be moved into second edition. They're already good for second edition. This brings me to one point that I wanted to make sure that gets out there. If you are buying first edition Frostgrave, or getting first edition Frostgrave just to play it, you're going to be tempted to buy the Grimoire. Now, the Grimoire is the complete collection of spells in card form from this book. If you're like me, you're going to get it. You're going to put them all in sleeves. You're going to buy a nice deck box for it. You're going to spend a lot more. You're going to spend more on protecting it than you did on it. But that's besides the point. This will not be translated to second edition. One of the big things that is changing is spells. So there's going to be another Grimoire, but it'll be for second edition. So if you're really interested in getting it, remember that it is only for first edition, and there will be another one for second edition.
Well, I think we've talked about that before. The whole Magic the Gathering is actually a front for the petrochemical industry to move card sleeves. So
yes.
So every game now has to have a card mechanic, and those cards must be easily disposed of. So
yes.
More card protector. They'll be different size too. So you have to, like, the old ones won't work. You'll have to get new ones.
But you need to protect your investment because cards are an investment. So you need to put them in sleeves so they hold their value.
They'll sit right next to those Beanie Babies. Which excellent story.
I mean, I have a couple cards that can buy a collection of Beanie Babies, so I think Magic's a little bit better. But that's also true. I mean, you buy a lot of sleeves. I mean, on my desk right now, I have just like sleeves hanging around. I have I have a deck that is triple sleeve, so you have some validity there.
Okay. So, what would you say the game is missing?
First edition is with just looking at this book. Um, the treasure system for the campaign rules is a little wonky, and allows for players to get really ahead if they win.
I
So it
think I've
kind of
heard
becomes
about
a
that.
snowball
Did
effect.
I think I heard about that because wasn't it? I think what was the complaint? Necromancers.
Necromancers and uh, elementalists,
Okay.
because you just cast fireball and you're just dealing damage. The XP system also allows for people to get really, really good, really fast in this original book. Now, um, he fixes this in the second book or the second or third campaign book he wrote, and it makes it really, really good. And then that translates over to second edition as well. So if you're just getting this book, that is one of the problems with it. The other one is that you'll be very drawn to getting an elementalist or a necromancer because their spells are very powerful and have very little drawbacks to them. Where other wizards are interesting, their spells are less viable on the table or not as flashy as Fireball or Firestorm. So you're really going to be drawn to certain ones that are more powerful, where the other ones I think are more fun, um, get overlooked because they don't have that wow factor.
It is like D&D. Like whoever took an
It,
illusionist, like a first level illusion.
me, but
Losers did that too.
I mean,
All right. So I know second edition's already out, so we're just going over first edition. But looking back, where did you hope first edition would go?
I hope first edition went where it went. A lot of campaign books, expanded classes. So there's more wizard schools in other books. There's the Beastmaster, which is awesome. Um, More spells, more people you can hire. That was the big thing that I really wanted because it is a decently small list and that can be expanded upon, and it definitely was. But looking just at this book, that's where I would want it to go. Um, More campaign missions, a better campaign system, um, more wizard schools, more spells, and more hirelings.
Okay. So the final two questions. Why should you play this game?
You should play first edition if you want to get a free miniature game that you'll instantly want to buy the second edition of, and you want a game that's super easy to get into. If you already have miniatures, it's even easier to get into. If you play D&D, you have everything except terrain. So you should play this if you want a super cheap, super easy game to get into.
Well, let me ask you, what is the playing surface for Frostgrave?
3x3.
Could you have the dungeon tiles, right? That book that they use for the D&Ders use?
Yes, that could be used. It's a little small.
Okay. But I mean, so I've got like the big I went to Etna, I bought that 4x6 um, grid. You take the wet erase, you can draw on it. So I mean, if you're D&D, you already have all the tools. So technically, you wouldn't even need the terrain. You just like draw. There's There's a tree
Oh,
here.
you're talking. So I was thinking you were talking about. There's a book that is the same thing and it has different settings on it.
Yeah, well,
That
I'm
one's a
just
little
saying
bit
the same
small,
thing.
but yeah, those square mats, like the Chessex battle mat, the Chessex mega mat. The mega mat would be perfect. The battle mat would be a little bit small, but the mega mat would be amazing. The Mondo mat way too big, just way too big. But the
Oh.
mega mat would be perfect.
Well, I was just trying to think because I know in one store I went to, the guy was flipping. He's selling a lot of D&D books, and he's selling a lot of Frostgrave books, and a lot of WizKid models. So I was just trying to think. It's like, well, would you really need terrain if you want to get into Frost? If you're in D&D and you want to go to Frostgrave 1.0, because a lot of the D&D, especially 5th edition, is a lot more miniature tactile than 2nd
Yes.
edition.
Now, the big thing with Frostgrave is that you want to put treasure in interesting places because it makes it harder to get, but also you let's say because each person gets to place a certain amount of treasure per uh, mission. So putting it in a place that benefits you is good. So let's say you have a wizard that can fly. You can cast fly on yourself, and you can or jump or something like that, and you get really high where your opponent cannot. Well, you put your treasure on top of a little hill, and that they can't climb, and you just jump up there, and then you jump back down, and boom, you've got it. So that is one of the better features that I find. But also, if you do want to get into Frostgrave real cheap, you could totally do that. I don't see anything wrong with that. It'll be a little more 2D, but just to learn the rules, if you already have that, it's free. You could potentially, if you have all of that for D&D, you could play Frostgrave 1.0 for free. So there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. So let's ask, why shouldn't you play this game?
I know a lot of people that want a more mass battle game. So if you're into mass battle games, or if you're a hardcore gamer that wants to, min max everything, I don't feel this game is for you. First edition maybe, because you can definitely min max some of the builds, but definitely not second edition. But I don't know. I don't think this game is for like hardcore 40K players that love that giant 500 miniatures on the table feel. I love small skirmish games. The less miniatures, like 5 to 10 miniatures is my sweet spot, and this hits it exactly perfectly. But there's the people that want to have 500 miniatures on the table. This game isn't for them.
Okay. Well, I think that wraps it up for this episode right now. And so next one we'll talk about Frostgrave 2.0, and so we'll start.
Yes, we will.
All right, so we'll sign off here. My name is James.
I'm Brian.
And we'll see you next time.